The laughter echoed through the Whole Foods aisle like a ghost from the past, making Julian Thatcher freeze in the checkout line. It wasn't just any laugh. It was clear, childlike, and agonizingly familiar in a way he couldn't explain. Julian looked up from his phone where moments before he'd been reviewing financial reports for his tech company. Whole Foods was busy that Thursday night, packed with Greenwich residents doing their post-work grocery run. He himself was only there because his housekeeper had called out and his fridge was empty. A situation he rarely faced at 34, accustomed as he was to having every detail of his life handled by others. The laughter came again, now accompanied by a voice that made his heart race. "Sammy, stop playing with the bags. Owen, help me here, honey." Julian turned slowly, as if fearing a sudden movement might break some spell. A few feet away near the bagging counter, a woman with brown hair pulled into a messy ponytail was organizing groceries with the help of two blonde boys. It was Clara. 10 years. It had been 10 years since he'd seen her, not since they broke up during their NYU business school days. She was thinner, with a few fine lines around her green eyes, but she was undeniably the same woman he'd fallen in love with at 22. The same one he'd left behind when he decided to accept the internship offer in Silicon Valley without looking back. But it wasn't the changes in Clara's face that made Julian forget to breathe. It was the boys. The twins must have been 5 or 6 years old. Light blonde hair, green eyes identical to their mother's, but there was something more. The shape of their faces, the line of their eyebrows, the way the more extroverted one gestured as he spoke. It was like looking at photographs of himself as a child. "Mommy, can I take the cookies to Grandma Martha?" the more animated boy asked, waving a pack of chocolate chip cookies. "Yes, Sammy, but be careful not to drop them." The other boy, quieter, methodically helped put the groceries into bags, organizing everything with a precision Julian recognized in himself. Julian's legs didn't seem to want to obey his brain's commands. He abandoned his cart with a few basic items in the line and walked toward them like a sleepwalker. "Clara?" She turned, and for a moment her face ran through a quick sequence of emotions. Surprise, recognition, something that looked like panic, and finally a kind of weary resignation. "Julian." Her voice was softer than he remembered. "Hi." The two boys stopped playing and looked at the tall man in a dark suit who had approached. The more extroverted one, Sammy, smiled broadly. The other, Owen, hid behind his mother. "Are they?" Julian started the question, but the words died in his throat. It was an unnecessary question. He knew the answer just by looking. Clara sighed, running a hand through Owen's hair in a protective gesture. "Yes, Julian, they're your sons." The supermarket continued to operate around them, carts rolling by, people chatting, ambient music playing. But for Julian, the world had completely stopped. 6 years. He had missed 6 years of his own children's lives. "Why?" he began, but Clara shook her head. "Not here." She looked at the boys who were watching the conversation with growing curiosity. "Do you guys want ice cream? There's an ice cream shop in the square." Sammy clapped his hands, excited. Owen just nodded, still clinging to his mother. As they walked the few yards to the ice cream shop, Julian felt in a state of shock. He was a father. He had 2 children. How had this happened without him knowing? How had Clara raised 2 children alone? And why did they look so much like him that anyone could spot the resemblance? At the ice cream shop, while the boys chose their flavors, Clara finally spoke, keeping her voice low. "I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after you left for the States." She didn't look at him, focusing on wiping Owen's hands with a napkin. "I tried to call you, text you. You'd changed your number." "Clara, No." She interrupted him, now looking at him. "I don't want to hear excuses now. They're here, you're here. That's what matters." Sammy, licking a chocolate ice cream cone, looked at Julian with interest. "Do you know Mommy, mister?" "Yes, I do." Julian knelt to be at the boy's height, feeling a pang in his chest. "We went to school together a long time ago." "Cool, you look like me, look." Sammy pointed to his own face, laughing. "Owen too, but he's more serious." Owen watched everything in silence, taking small spoonfuls of strawberry ice cream. "He doesn't talk much to people he doesn't know," Clara explained, with obvious affection in her voice. "He's more reserved." Exactly as Julian had been in childhood. The resemblance was disturbing and touching at the same time. They stayed a few more minutes at the ice cream shop, with Sammy dominating the conversation and asking questions about Julian's work, if he had a fancy car, if he knew how to play video games. Owen remained observant, but Julian noticed the boy studying him carefully as if trying to decipher a puzzle. When it was time to say goodbye, Julian felt a growing desperation. He couldn't let them go like this, not after discovering he was a father. "Clara, can we talk? Set up a time for them to get to know me better?" She hesitated, looking at her sons who waited beside her. "I don't know, Julian. It's complicated. Please." The word came out more vulnerable than he intended. "Just give me a chance to get to know them. To be what I should have been from the start." Sammy tugged at his mother's hand. "Mommy, can he come to the park with us?" "Owen likes to fly kites." Clara looked into Julian's eyes, and he saw years of hurt, exhaustion, and maternal protection. But he also saw something that could be hope. Saturday, Prospect Park, 2 in the afternoon. She took a card from her purse and wrote her cell phone number on the back. "If you don't show up, Julian, I never want you near them again. Understand?" He took the card as if it were the most precious object in the world. "I'll be there." As he watched them walk away, Sammy waving enthusiastically and Owen looking back one last time, Julian remained standing on the sidewalk, holding the card. In a single night, his life had completely changed. He was a father. He had 2 sons who didn't know him, an ex-girlfriend who had raised these children alone, and a meeting on Saturday that could define the rest of his life. The question echoing in his mind as he returned to his empty Greenwich apartment was simple, but terrifying. Did he know how to be a real father? Saturday arrived with Julian waking up at 5 in the morning after a restless night. He had spent the last few days researching everything about fatherhood online, buying gifts that now seemed inappropriate, and rehearsing conversations that sounded artificial in his head. He arrived at Prospect Park 15 minutes early, wearing jeans and a polo shirt, the most casual he could get without feeling uncomfortable. He carried a bag with colorful kites he'd bought at a specialty store. Clara appeared promptly at 2, with the twins running ahead of her. Sammy came straight to Julian, curious about the bag. Owen kept his distance, holding his mother's hand. "I brought kites," Julian announced, trying to sound natural. "Cool." Sammy enthusiastically examined the kites. "This one looks just like a dragon." Owen approached shyly, interested despite his reservation. "Can I hold it?" he asked quietly. "Of course." Julian knelt, offering a butterfly-shaped kite. "This one is special. It flies even with a light breeze." For the next hour, they tried to fly the kites on the lawn. Sammy was pure energy, running back and forth, laughing loudly when he managed to get his kite up. Owen was more methodical, observing the wind's direction before attempting. "You have to feel the wind," Julian explained to Owen, holding the string with him. "It's like a dance." "Did your dad teach you that?" Owen asked innocently. The question caught Julian off guard. His father had died when he was 8, and his mother never had time for games like that. "No, I learned on my own, when I was older." Clara, who had been observing from a distance, approached. "Want to get some juice? There's a snack bar over there." At the table, while the boys competed to see who could blow more bubbles, Clara and Julian finally talked. "How did you manage to raise them both alone?" he asked. "Martha helps me a lot. She's like a grandma to them." Clara stirred her straw in her juice. "And my parents give what they can, but they never approved of my pregnancy. They said I should have sought you out more, that I'd ruin my life." Julian felt the weight of guilt. They were right. You should have sought me out more. "I tried, Julian. But you had disappeared, changed your number, deleted your social media. It was as if you'd never existed. I was focused on my career." "I know. And it worked out, didn't it? I saw your company in the news." They were interrupted by Owen, who had silently approached. "Mommy, I'm short of breath." Immediately, Clara became alert, pulling an asthma inhaler from her bag. "Breathe slowly, honey." She helped Owen use the medication with practical, loving movements. "He has asthma?" Julian asked, concerned. "Since he was little. Strong emotions sometimes trigger attacks." Julian looked at Owen, who was breathing easier now but looked embarrassed. "Hey, that happens. My mom had asthma too," he lied, trying to make the boy feel better. Owen looked at him with interest. She did? She did. And she was the bravest woman I ever knew. It wasn't true. His mother had been rigid and distant, but the lie seemed necessary. The rest of the afternoon passed more calmly. They played hide and seek among the trees, and Julian discovered that Sammy was competitive like him, while Owen preferred to observe and think before acting. When it was time to leave, Sammy hugged Julian without ceremony. "Will you come back another day?" "If your mom lets me, I'll be back." Owen approached hesitantly, extending his hand for a formal handshake. "It was nice meeting you." As they walked to the parking lot, Clara spoke softly. "They liked you. And you?" The question escaped before he could contain it. Clara stopped walking. "I need to protect them, Julian. They've asked about their father other times. If you come into their lives, you can't leave when you get tired of the novelty." "I won't get tired. How can I be sure?" It was a fair question, and Julian didn't have a convincing answer. All he could offer was honesty. "You can't. But I want to try. I want to get to know them for real." Clara looked into Julian's eyes and he saw years of hurt, weariness, and maternal protection. But she also saw something that could be hope. "We can try regular visits. Weekends. But slowly. Deal." As he watched them get into the car, a used but well-maintained sedan, Julian felt a mix of hope and anxiety. He had taken the first step, but he knew the path would be long. The question that tormented him now was different. How to become the father they needed when he himself had never had a model of what that meant. 3 weeks later, Julian had established a routine. Saturdays at the park, Sundays at Clara's apartment in Park Slope. It was a stark contrast to his penthouse in Greenwich. Her apartment was small but full of life. Children's drawings covered the fridge, toys scattered across the living room, and there was always the smell of homemade food in the air. "Martha, this is the best chocolate chip cookie I've ever eaten," Julian said, sitting at the kitchen table as he watched the 60-year-old woman stir the dough in the bowl. "The secret is love, dear," she replied, without stopping stirring. "And patience. Children sense when you're in a hurry." Martha had proved an unexpected ally. She had worked for Clara for 5 years, since the twins were babies, and treated them like grandchildren. She was the one who picked them up from school when Clara couldn't, who made dinner on nights she worked late, who knew every tantrum and every joy of the boys. "Owen's testing you," she commented, lowering the heat. "Smart kids do that. They want to see if you'll stay or if you'll leave like the others." "Others?" Clara dated 2-3 times over the years, but when the boys started to get attached, she'd break it off. "She's too protective of them, poor thing." Julian absorbed the information. In the bedroom, he could hear Sammy excitedly explaining a video game to Owen, who responded with concentrated monosyllables. "How do I show I'm not leaving?" "By showing up. Every day you promise. Every time you set. And by listening. You talk too much. You try to impress. Kids don't care about your money." The observation struck him. It was true. He always arrived with expensive gifts, told stories about international trips, tried to show what he could offer materially. "A father isn't Santa Claus," Martha continued. "He's who's there when they need him." That Sunday, Julian decided to try something different. Instead of arriving with new toys, he brought only an old deck of cards he'd found at home. "Shall we play Crazy Eights?" he suggested. "I don't know how," Owen said. "Me neither," Sammy admitted. "Great. No one here knows how. Let's learn together." They spent the whole afternoon trying to understand the rules, laughing at their mistakes, inventing their own variations. Owen, initially shy, began to suggest changes to the game. Sammy made dramatic faces every time he lost a round. "You're a terrible cheater," Owen said to Julian, laughing for the first time since they met. "And you're too observant," Julian replied. "You inherited that from me. My mom says I look like you when I'm thoughtful." It was the first time Owen had made a direct reference to their resemblance. Julian felt something warm in his chest. When Clara arrived from work, she gave private English lessons on weekends. She found the 3 of them still at the table, surrounded by cards and remnants of chocolate chip cookies. "How was your day?" she asked, kissing the boys' foreheads. "Dad," Owen began, then quickly corrected himself. "Julian cheats at Crazy Eights." "Dad?" Clara raised an eyebrow. "It was an accident." Owen blushed. "He was just teaching." "It's okay." Clara said softly. He is your dad. Later, when the boys went to take a bath, Clara and Julian were alone in the living room. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For not making a fuss when he called you Dad. For not turning it into a big emotional moment. Julian had noticed. His first impulse had been to do exactly that. But something in Owen's naturalness had stopped him. Martha told me I talked too much. Clara smiled. The first genuine smile he had seen since their reunion. She's right. You always talked too much when you were nervous. I remember you complaining about that in college. And you never listened to me. The comment could have sounded like a criticism, but there was lightness in her voice. Julian realized they were having their first truly relaxed conversation in 10 years. I'm trying to learn to listen now. I see that. Clara settled deeper into the couch. They like you. Really? And you? The question hung in the air for a moment. Clara studied him with those green eyes he knew so well. I'm learning to trust you again, slowly. It was the most he could hope for at the moment, and Julian knew it. When he said goodbye that night, Owen waved from the window until he disappeared from sight. In the car, driving back home, Julian reflected on Martha's words. Perhaps being a father wasn't about what he could give or teach, but about being present in the small moments that built a relationship. The question that accompanied him home was new. Could he maintain that constant presence when the novelty wore off? The call came on a Tuesday, at 2 a.m. Julian woke up with his heart pounding, still half asleep, but Clara's name on the screen made him completely alert. Julian. Her voice was tense, almost whispering. Can you come here? It's Owen. What happened? Severe asthma attack. I'm taking him to the hospital now, but Sammy is here and I can't leave him alone. Martha won't be here until tomorrow morning. Julian was already getting dressed. Which hospital? NYU Langone. Can you stay with Sammy? Of course. I'm leaving now. 20 minutes later, Julian arrived at the apartment in Park Slope. Clara was at the door carrying Owen in her arms. The boy was breathing with difficulty but was conscious. Mommy, won't it take long? Sammy asked, clinging to Clara's leg, clearly scared. No, my love. Julian will stay here with you, okay? Sammy nodded, but Julian could see the fear in the boy's eyes. Owen waved weakly to his father before they disappeared into the elevator. Back in the apartment, Sammy sat on the couch, quieter than usual. Will he be okay? He asked, his voice small. Yes, he will. Your mom knows exactly what to do, and the doctors will take care of him. He had an attack at school last week, too. That's why I fought with Tyler. Tyler? A boy from my class. He kept saying Owen was weak, that asthma was just being dramatic. So I pushed him. Julian sat next to Sammy, better understanding the protection one brother felt for the other. You love your brother very much. He's my best friend. Sammy leaned against Julian's arm. Even when he's annoying and doesn't want to play my games. They spent the next few hours watching cartoons and eating cookies. Sammy dozed off on the couch around 4 a.m, and Julian stayed awake waiting for news and watching the boy sleep. At 6, Clara called. He's stable. Can you take Sammy to school? I won't be able to leave here in time. Of course. Where are his things? Backpack by the entrance, lunchbox in the fridge already packed. The school is in the neighborhood. You remember the address I sent you on WhatsApp? Julian remembered. He had memorized everything related to his children. Waking Sammy, giving him breakfast, and taking him to school was more complex than he expected. The boy was sleepy and worried, didn't want to brush his teeth, forgot his gym shoes. Are you going to pick Owen up from the hospital later? He asked in the car. I am, and then we'll all go get ice cream when he's better. Promise? Promise. At school, Julian explained the situation to the teacher. She knew him. Clara had informed the school about the father's presence in the boys' lives. Sammy gets very anxious when Owen has attacks. The teacher commented. They're very close. Back at the hospital, Julian found Clara in the hallway, exhausted. Owen was sleeping in the room with an oxygen mask. How is he? Better. The doctor said it was caused by anxiety. He got very nervous yesterday at school because of a presentation. Julian looked at his sleeping son so small in the big hospital bed. Is it my fault? He asked softly. Is my presence in his life causing anxiety? Clara looked at him with surprise. Why would you think that? Change of routine. A father who shows up out of nowhere after 6 years. Julian, he was anxious because he forgot his lines for the school play. It has nothing to do with you. But the seed of doubt was planted. Owen woke up a few hours later, still weak but breathing better. He smiled when he saw Julian. You came. Of course I came. How are you feeling? Better. Did you take Sammy to school? I did. He was worried about you. Owen nodded, tired. He always is. That's why I don't like it when I get sick. In the afternoon, when Owen was discharged, they picked Sammy up from school. The brothers' reunion was emotional. Sammy hugged Owen carefully as if he might break. Are you okay? Can I tell you what happened at school? You can, Owen replied, smiling. On the way home, they stopped at the promised ice cream shop. While the boys chose their flavors, Clara pulled Julian aside. Thank you for yesterday, for being there when I needed you. That's what I'm here for. I know. And they know too now. Observing Owen and Sammy sharing a chocolate cone, Julian realized something he hadn't understood before. Being a father wasn't just about the happy moments. It was about being present in the crises, in the difficult late nights, in the fears that arose without warning. The question that accompanied him that night was no longer about his ability to be a father, but about something deeper. Was he prepared to share not only the joys, but also the scares and responsibilities that came with this new family? 2 weeks after the hospital crisis, Julian was in his office reviewing contracts when his assistant announced an urgent call from Clara. It was mid-afternoon on a Thursday, an unusual time for her to call. Julian, I need to talk to you. Something's happened. Are the boys okay? They are. But I received a job offer. In Portland, Oregon. Julian's world stopped. Portland was over 2,800 miles from New York. What kind of offer? Curriculum coordination at an international school. It's exactly what I've always wanted to do. Triple my salary, full health insurance for me and the boys, free private school for them. Julian could hear the contained excitement in her voice, mixed with something that sounded like guilt. That's an incredible opportunity, Clara. It is. But they want an answer in 2 weeks. Silence. Julian knew he couldn't ask her to refuse an opportunity like that because of him. But the idea of being far from his sons, just now that he'd learned to be a father, was unbearable. Can we talk in person? He asked. Of course. Tomorrow night? The boys are sleeping at my sister's house. On Friday, Julian arrived at the apartment in Park Slope with a knot in his stomach. Clara had prepared dinner, simple pasta, but with a homey smell he'd learned to associate with family. Tell me more about the position, he said, trying to sound natural. It's at a school that follows the Finnish methodology. They want someone to structure the entire elementary school pedagogical program from scratch. It would be my project. Her eyes sparkled as she spoke. Julian knew her well enough to know it was her professional dream coming true. What about the boys? The school they'd attend is excellent. It has a special program for Owen's asthma, a school psychologist, everything they need. She stirred her food without eating. But, they've only just started to have a father. How do I explain that we're moving? Have you talked to them yet? No. I wanted to talk to you first. Julian felt a pang in his chest. She was considering his feelings, putting him in the equation as a real father. Clara, you can't refuse an opportunity like this because of me. It's not just because of you, it's for them too. Sammy asks every morning if you're going to show up on the weekend. Owen wrote me a little note yesterday, saying you're the best dad in the world even though you were late. The note. Julian remembered. He had promised to pick Owen up from school on Tuesday, but a meeting had run long, and he arrived 20 minutes late. They've grown attached to you, Julian. Really? And I to them. They fell silent for a moment, each lost in their thoughts. Is there an alternative? Julian asked. Some middle ground? I don't see how. The school wants someone in person, full-time dedication. What if... Julian stopped, not believing what he was about to suggest. What if I moved to Portland too? Clara looked at him as if he'd spoken in Chinese. What do you mean? My company has offices all over the country. I can coordinate operations from the West Coast. It wouldn't be ideal, but it's possible. Julian, are you serious? I am. And he was. The idea had just come to him, but it made sense. I don't want to lose the boys again. And you deserve this opportunity. Clara stood up, pacing the small living room. This is crazy, you've barely known them for 2 months. But I know them enough to know I want to be in their lives, always. What if it doesn't work out? What if you regret it? It was the question she needed to ask and that he needed to answer honestly. Then at least I'll have tried, and they'll know their dad fought to be close. Clara returned to the table, her eyes moist. Would you really do that? I would. I'm making the offer. She studied him for a long moment. I need to think. It's a lot of change all at once. Of course. But Clara, don't decline the job for fear of how it will affect my relationship with them. We'll figure it out together. When Julian left that night, he knew he had crossed a line. He was no longer just trying to be a present father on weekends. He was willing to change his entire life for his children. The question echoing in his mind was different now. Was he making the right decision, or letting the desperation of not losing his children cloud his judgment? The following Sunday, Clara decided to talk to the twins. Julian was present. She had asked him to be there, saying it was a family decision now. They all sat in the living room, Sammy on the floor playing with toy cars, Owen flipping through a dinosaur book. Clara took a deep breath. Boys, I need to talk to you about something important. Sammy immediately looked up. Owen closed his book but kept his finger marking the page. Mommy received an offer to work in another city, a city called Portland. Where is it? Sammy asked. Far from New York. It would be a really good job for me at a new school. Owen frowned. And we'd go too? That's the thing. If I accept, we'd have to move. Silence. Sammy had completely stopped playing. Owen opened the book again, but Julian noticed he wasn't reading. It was his way of processing difficult information. What about Dad? Sammy asked in a small voice. Dad? Clara looked at Julian. Dad is thinking of moving too, to be close to you. Sammy ran to Julian. Is it true? Are you coming too? If you want, and if your mom lets me, yes. Owen closed the book again, this time putting it aside completely. Why does Mommy want to leave? The question came out more accusatory than he probably intended. Clara knelt in front of him. It's not that I want to leave you. It's that a very good job opportunity came up. You know when you win an award at school for working really hard? Owen nodded. It's kind of like that. Mommy studied hard to get a job like this. But we like it here, Sammy said. And Martha and Grandma? It was true. The move would mean leaving behind not just the place, but the people who were part of their routine. Martha could come with us if she wanted, Clara said. And Grandma can visit. Owen got up and went to the window, looking out at the street. It was his way of thinking when he was overwhelmed. Can I say something? Julian asked carefully. The boys looked at him. When I was little, my family moved a few times because of my grandfather's job. At first, I always felt sad, afraid I wouldn't like the new place. And did you like it? Sammy asked. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But you know what I discovered? The most important thing wasn't the place. It was being with the people I loved. Owen turned from the window. But what if we don't make new friends? You will. You're amazing. Any kid would want to be your friend. Sammy climbed onto the couch next to Clara. Mommy, will you be very sad if you don't go? The question caught Clara off guard. She looked at her son, seeing a maturity she sometimes forgot he possessed. A little, yes, but I'll be happy here with you too. What if we go and don't like it? Then we'll come back, Julian said, before Clara could answer. I promise. If you don't adapt, we'll find a way to come back. Clara looked at him, surprised, but didn't contradict him. Owen came back closer to them. Can I think about it until tomorrow? Of course, Clara said. It's an important decision. You have the right to think. Later, after the children were asleep, Clara and Julian talked on the balcony. You can't promise we'll come back if it doesn't work out, she said. What if I can't get another job here? You will. And if you don't, I'll support you until you do. Julian, I'm serious, Clara. I want you to achieve your dream, and I want to be close to our sons. If that means taking some risks, I'll take them. The next morning, Owen appeared in the kitchen with his dinosaur book under his arm. Mommy, does Portland have a dinosaur museum? Clara quickly looked on her phone. Yes, it does. And very beautiful parks too. Owen nodded. Thoughtful. Then I think we can try. Sammy, who was drinking chocolate milk, raised his fist in the air. Adventure. That night, Clara called the school in Portland. I accept the offer. As she spoke on the phone, confirming details, Julian watched the boys playing. In 3 weeks, everything would change. They would be in a new city, starting a different life. The question that haunted him now was the most concrete of all. Could he really rebuild his company in another state? Or was he making promises he couldn't keep? The next 2 weeks flew by like a whirlwind. Julian discovered that organizing a family move was infinitely more complex than reorganizing a company. "Daddy, what if Patches doesn't like the new apartment?" Sammy asked, holding his hamster while Julian disassembled the cage. "We'll make him feel at home. Maybe buy him some different seeds to try." Patches had been a recent acquisition, a gift from Julian that had initially caused some tension with Clara. You can't just show up with an animal without asking, but was now part of the family. Owen was sitting on the bed, methodically organizing his books in a box. "How many dinosaurs actually existed?" he asked, without looking up. "Thousands of different species." "Why?" "Just checking if I'll need more space for my books in the new room." It was typical of Owen to plan every detail. Julian had discovered that his son had inherited his organizational side, while Sammy was pure spontaneity. At the company, things were more complicated than Julian had anticipated. His partner Sarah was not happy with the decision at all. "Are you crazy?" she said during a meeting in the office. "You can't manage operations from the West Coast by video conference. We have big clients here who need a physical presence. I can travel when necessary. Once, twice a month to New York. What about the contracts being negotiated here? The expansion into California?" Julian knew she was right. He was risking a lot from a professional standpoint. But when he thought about the possibility of losing his sons again, no contract seemed important enough. "Sarah, you have to trust me. I'm going to make it work. And if it doesn't, then I'll face the consequences." At home, Martha was also dealing with the change in her own way. "Portland is cold, boys. You'll need real coats," she said, folding winter clothes she had bought. "And you have to be careful with the change in climate. Owen might have more attacks at first." "Are you really coming with us, Martha?" Owen asked, hugging her around the waist. "Someone has to take care of you. And as a bonus, teach your dad how to make decent chili." Julian smiled. Martha had accepted the move more easily than anyone, saying only, "Wherever you go, I go. Family doesn't separate." On the Friday before the move, Clara organized a farewell dinner with their few close friends. Julian observed the interactions, realizing how she was leaving behind a support network built over years. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked when they were alone in the kitchen, washing dishes. Sure, no. But sometimes life demands we make decisions without being absolutely certain. What if I disappoint you? What if I can't keep the company running from there?" Clara stopped drying the plate in her hands. "Julian, you've already proven you've changed. 2 months ago, you wouldn't even know what asthma inhaler Owen uses. Yesterday, you went to the pharmacy to get a spare without anyone asking." It was true. Small details that had become natural for him. "Besides," she continued, "you've already had professional success. Now it's time to discover what kind of father you want to be." On Saturday, their last day in New York, Julian took the boys to say goodbye to Prospect Park. Sammy ran on the grass, making plans for when they would visit. Owen collected pebbles to take as souvenirs. "Daddy, will you miss it?" Owen asked, putting a pebble in Julian's hand. "I will, but I'll be happy because I'll be with you." "What if Mommy doesn't like the new job?" Julian knelt, getting to his son's height. "Then we'll figure it out. Together. That's what families are for. To solve problems together." Owen nodded, seeming satisfied with the answer. That night at their last dinner in the Park Slope apartment, with boxes stacked everywhere and Patches running free because his cage was already packed, Julian looked around the table, Clara checking a to-do list on her phone, Sammy telling bad jokes he'd learned at school, Owen reading a book about Portland that Martha had bought, Martha serving the last New York-style chili before the move. It was the family he never knew he wanted, and he was about to bet everything on it. The question that kept him awake that last night in New York was simple, yet terrifying. Would simply wanting it to work out be enough? Portland greeted them with a fine drizzle and 59 degrees Fahrenheit, a stark contrast to New York's heat. Julian had rented a house in the Agua Verde neighborhood, close to both the school where Clara would work and the boys' school. "It's cold," exclaimed Sammy, jumping out of the moving van. "But cool, it looks like a movie." Owen was more reserved, observing the tree-lined street and the houses different from what they were used to. He held the box with his dinosaur books as if it were a treasure. "It's bigger than our apartment," he observed when they entered the house. "Much bigger," Clara agreed, looking at the 3 bedrooms, spacious living room, and small but cozy backyard. Martha went straight to the kitchen, already assessing where everything would go. "New stove, new fridge. I'll have to get used to it," she murmured. But Julian could tell she was enjoying it. The first few days were a mix of discoveries and adaptations. Sammy was excited about the playground in the square across the street. Owen found a community library 2 blocks from home and immediately wanted to sign up. Clara was nervous, but excited about her new job. Julian, on the other hand, was facing his first major professional crisis. The clients in California canceled the contract. Sarah informed him during a video conference. They said they need someone present, not remote management. It was the 3rd lost contract in a week. Julian felt the weight of the decision he had made. What about the other negotiations? 2 paused, 1 canceled. "Julian, you need to come back or we'll lose everything we've built." After the call, he sat in the improvised office he'd set up in a corner of the living room, looking out the window. The square was busy, children playing, parents chatting. He could see Sammy teaching a local boy how to fly a kite. "Problems?" Clara asked, bringing him a coffee. "The company is losing contracts. Sarah thinks I should go back to New York. And what do you think?" "That maybe she's right." Julian sighed. "I might be sacrificing everything I've built for a whim." "Whim?" Clara sat next to him. "Do you think wanting to be close to your sons is a whim?" "No, but..." "Julian, remember when you told me you'd already had professional success? Maybe it's time to discover what else can make you happy." That weekend, Julian decided to explore the city with the boys while Clara organized her things for her first day of work. They went to the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, which Owen loved, and the International Rose Test Garden, where Sammy was fascinated by the different roses. "Daddy, did you know there are plants that eat bugs?" Sammy asked, glued to the glass of a greenhouse. "I did. They're called carnivorous plants." "I want one." Owen was more interested in the museum's exhibits. "Why does that exhibit look like a giant eye?" he asked. "It's the architect's style. Everyone has their own way of creating." "How did you create your company?" The question caught Julian off guard. Owen always asked direct, deep questions. "I started small, with an idea. I built it bit by bit, learning from my mistakes." "And now you're going to build again here?" "I'm going to try." "You'll succeed," Owen said with simple conviction. "You're smart, and you have us to help." On Monday, while Clara went to her first day at the new school and the children started classes, Julian had a revelation. Instead of trying to maintain the New York office remotely, he could start something new there. Portland had a growing tech market, local companies that needed digital solutions. He called Sarah. "What if instead of trying to control everything from afar, I set up an office here? Expand the company to the West Coast?" "Are you talking about starting from scratch?" "I'm talking about growing. We have expertise, success stories. I can use that to conquer the local market." There was a long pause. "It's risky, but it could work. We'd have to restructure a lot." "I'm willing to risk it." That night, when the whole family gathered for dinner, Martha had made a beef stroganoff that Sammy declared almost as good as chocolate chip cookies. Julian shared his decision. "So you're not going back to New York?" Owen asked. "I'm not going back. I'm going to build something new here, with you." Sammy clapped his hands. Owen smiled, a small but genuine smile. "I think that was a good decision," Clara said. "Courageous." That night, Julian walked around the backyard of the new house, listening to the different sounds of the city. It wasn't the traffic noise of Park Slope or the sound of the ocean. It was quieter, more familiar. For the first time in weeks, the question in his mind wasn't about whether he'd made the right decision, but about how to make this new life work best for everyone. 3 weeks after the move, the honeymoon with Portland was coming to an end. The real challenges began to appear. Owen was having difficulties at the new school. It wasn't with the subjects. He continued to be the dedicated student he always was, but with his classmates. They talked differently, he complained during dinner, picking at his food without wanting to eat. And they keep imitating my accent. What do you mean imitating? Julian asked. They keep saying things like, "Sup, dude," and laughing. They say I talk funny. Clara and Julian exchanged worried glances. Sammy, always more socially adaptable, wasn't having the same problems. In my class, everyone thought it was cool that I came from New York, Sammy said. The teacher even asked me to tell them about the beaches. The difference between the brothers was becoming more evident. While Sammy made friends easily, Owen was becoming more isolated. What if I talk to the teacher? Clara suggested. No, Owen protested immediately. It'll just make it worse. Julian remembered himself as a child, always preferring to solve problems alone, hating when adults interfered. How about you tell me more about these boys? Maybe we can think of a solution together. Owen looked at him considering. There's this boy Tyler who's the worst. He started the imitations. And the others follow him? Yeah. He's like the leader of the class. I see. Have you tried talking to him? Talk how? Show him you have things in common. You like dinosaurs, what does he like? Owen thought for a moment. Football. He's always talking about the Portland Timbers. Good. And do you know anything about football? A little. Sammy taught me. Meanwhile, Julian was facing his own challenges. Setting up an office from scratch was harder than he imagined. There were cultural differences in how business was done, an already established local competition, and the constant pressure to prove that the move had been worth it. We lost another potential client, Sarah informed him during their weekly call. The New York office is working, but with tight margins. If things don't take off there soon, it will take off, Julian replied, with more confidence than he felt. Martha, sensing the tension in the house, was doing what she did best, taking care of everyone through food and small gestures. Dear, you're not eating well, she said to Julian, serving a generous portion of rice and chili. Stress isn't solved on an empty stomach. I am eating, Martha. You're eating badly, and sleeping even worse. I saw your office light on until 2 a.m. yesterday. It was true. Julian was working late, trying to compensate for the day's difficulties with extra hours. You know what you need, Martha continued. To go out a bit, get to know the city. How are you going to do business in a city you don't know? The observation made sense. Julian had been so focused on work that he had barely left the house except to pick up and drop off the children at school. That weekend, he decided to follow her advice. He woke up early and went for a walk downtown alone. He discovered the public market, talked to merchants, observed the movement of people. At a coffee shop, he overheard a conversation between 2 local entrepreneurs about the difficulties they were having with management systems. Excuse me, he interrupted politely. Sorry to butt in, but I'm in tech. Maybe I can help? An hour later, he had 2 business cards and the outline of a work proposal. At home, he found Owen in the backyard, kicking a ball alone against the wall. Since when do you play soccer? Julian asked. Since yesterday, I'm practicing to talk to Tyler. And how's it going? Terrible. But Sammy said I'm getting better. Julian picked up the ball. Can I try too? For the next half hour, father and son kicked the ball in the small backyard, missing more than hitting, but laughing at both their clumsy attempts. Daddy, you're as bad as me, Owen said, laughing. Worse, probably. But we're learning, right? Yeah. And at least we're learning together. That night, Owen came home from school with news. I talked to Tyler about soccer, he announced, with contained pride. How did it go? He was surprised I knew the names of some Portland Timbers players. Then he stopped imitating my accent. And the other boys? Some still imitate, but less. I think when Tyler stopped, they felt awkward too. It wasn't a complete solution, but it was progress. And Owen had managed it alone, in his own way. At night, when the children were asleep, Clara and Julian were talking on the couch. How was your day? She asked. Better. I got 2 potential clients, and I learned I need to get out more, get to know the city. That's good to hear. You were getting too isolated. And you? How are you feeling at work? Good. Challenged, but good. The methodology is different, but I'm learning a lot. Julian looked at Clara, noticing how much more professionally fulfilled she seemed. No regrets about coming? No. And you? The question that had tormented him in the first weeks now had a clear answer. No. Even with all the difficulties. I don't regret it. But as the days passed, a new concern began to emerge. Could he balance building the new company with the need to be present for his family, especially when the adaptation challenges had not yet been completely overcome? The emergency call came on a Thursday afternoon. Julian was in a meeting with a potential client when the school phone interrupted everything. "Mr. Thatcher? Owen had a severe asthma attack. We've already called the ambulance." The client, the contracts, everything disappeared from Julian's mind. He rushed to the hospital, arriving at the same time as the ambulance. Owen was conscious but breathing with difficulty. He held his father's hand on the way to the emergency room. "Daddy, couldn't breathe," he murmured between forced breaths. "It's going to be okay now. I'm here." At the hospital, while Owen was being medicated, Julian called Clara. She arrived 20 minutes later with Sammy and Martha. "What happened?" she asked, hugging Owen. "The doctors think it was emotional stress," Julian explained. "He had an argument with some classmates." Sammy stood by the bed, holding his brother's hand. "Were they mean again?" Owen nodded, still weak. "They said I was weird, that I couldn't play anything right." Julian felt anger rising but forced himself to remain calm. "I'll talk to the school tomorrow." "No," Owen protested. "It'll make it worse." "Owen, this can't continue," Clara said firmly. "You can't get sick because of this." They spent the night at the hospital. Owen slept between small awakenings, always checking if his father was still there. Julian didn't leave his bedside. In the morning, Owen was better, but the doctors recommended a few days of rest. "I need to fix this," Julian said to Clara in the hallway. "How?" "I don't know yet, but I can't let my son suffer like this." At home, while Owen slept, Sammy approached his father. "Daddy, I know who the boys are who bother Owen." "You do?" "They're from my class too. Tyler and his friends." "And you never did anything?" Sammy lowered his head. I didn't want them to pick on me too." Julian knelt to his son's height. "Sammy, your brother needs you. You two are a team." "I know. I'm sorry, Dad. No need to apologize, but now let's help him together, okay?" That weekend, Julian had an idea. Owen had always liked things others found weird: dinosaurs, books, scientific curiosities. Instead of trying to make him fit in, maybe it was time to show that being different was a quality. "Owen, how about you do a presentation on dinosaurs for your class?" "It won't work," Owen murmured. "They'll laugh." "What if Sammy helped you? What if you did it together?" Sammy immediately brightened up. "I can tell the cool parts, like how they fought." Owen thought for a moment. "Maybe, if it's about the carnivores." On Monday, Julian went to school with the two boys. He talked to the teacher about the presentation, and discreetly, about what was happening with Owen. "I noticed some tensions," the teacher admitted. "Tyler can be quite domineering. I don't want Owen to be overprotected, I just want him to have a fair chance." The presentation happened on Wednesday. Julian managed to leave work to watch, something he wouldn't have done months earlier. Owen started shy, but as he talked about Tyrannosaurus Rex and velociraptors, his passion for the subject shone through. Sammy complimented enthusiastically, imitating dinosaur sounds that made the whole class laugh. Tyler, in the end, raised his hand. "How do you know all that?" "I read a lot," Owen replied simply. "Cool. Do you have books about marine dinosaurs?" It was the beginning of a conversation, not a provocation. After the presentation, some classmates approached Owen with questions. For the first time, Julian saw his son smiling naturally at school. That night, Owen told everything at dinner. "Tyler said I know more interesting things than anyone in the class." "And did you like presenting?" Martha asked. "I did. It was less scary than I thought." Julian looked at his sons, then at Clara, who smiled proudly. The question that accompanied him that night was different. Was he finally learning that being a father wasn't about protecting his children from all problems, but about teaching them to face challenges by being themselves? 2 months after the move, things began to fall into place. Owen had made some friends at school, including Tyler, who he discovered had a secret passion for astronomy. Sammy continued to be the family extrovert, but now defended his brother when necessary. Julian was in the kitchen preparing breakfast, a skill he had developed out of necessity, when his cell phone rang. "Julian, we have a proposal," Sarah said, excited. A large company in California wants to hire our services to expand to the West Coast. Guess where they want the office? Portland? Exactly. And they want you in charge of the operation. It was confirmation that the gamble had paid off. Julian felt an enormous relief. What's the contract value? When Sarah said the number, Julian almost dropped his coffee cup. Dad, why are you making a surprised face? Sammy asked, entering the kitchen. Daddy got some good news at work, he explained, hanging up the phone. Cool. Does that mean we don't have to go back to New York? Owen asked, appearing behind his brother. It means we're staying right here. The two boys cheered, and Julian realized that they really had adapted to the new city. That night during dinner, he shared the news with the whole family. I knew it would work out, Martha said, serving more rice. A hard-working man always finds his place. And you, Clara? How are things at school? Julian asked. Great. The principal invited me to coordinate a pilot project with other schools in the city. It would be a promotion. Mom, that's awesome, Sammy said. Owen smiled. We're doing well here, aren't we? We are, Julian agreed. Later, after the children were asleep, Clara and Julian were talking on the porch. You've changed a lot, she said suddenly. How so? 6 months ago, you barely knew the names of the boys' teachers. Today, you made sure to leave work to watch Owen's presentation. Priorities changed. They really did. And you know what's most impressive? What? You haven't lost your professional ambition. You've just learned to balance it. Julian reflected on this. It was true. Success still mattered to him, but it was no longer the only thing that mattered. Can I ask you something? He said. Of course. Are you happy? Truly happy? Clara thought for a moment. I am. Professionally, I'm fulfilled. The boys are good, safe, and I have you here being the father they always needed. It was the closest thing to a compliment she had given him since their reunion. Clara, I know our relationship is complicated. It is, she agreed. But it's working. For the boys. For us. It truly is. That weekend, Julian organized a surprise. He took the whole family, including Martha, to visit Silver Falls State Park. Look at the size of these rocks, exclaimed Sammy, running among the rock formations. Owen was fascinated by the geology of the place. Daddy, these rocks are millions of years old. Older than the dinosaurs? Much older. As they walked the trail, Martha pulled Julian aside. Dear, did you see how different the two of them are? How so? Sammy's more mature, protecting his brother without being told. Owen's more confident, doesn't hide anymore when there are new people. It was true. Julian had noticed the changes, but hearing it from Martha confirmed them. And you, she continued, you don't look like that nervous man who showed up at Whole Foods anymore. I don't feel nervous anymore either. That's because you found your place. A man without family is like a tree without roots. That night, back home, Owen approached Julian in the living room. Dad, can I say something? Always. Thank you for coming to Portland with us. Thank you for letting me be part of your family. Owen smiled and gave him a quick hug before going up to his room. Julian remained alone in the living room, looking at the photos that already decorated the new bookshelf. Photos of the family in Portland, of the boys at school, of simple but important moments. 6 months earlier, his life was an empty apartment, solitary professional success, and a controlled but meaningless routine. Now he had arguments about homework, fights over video games, asthma attacks in the middle of the night, school presentations, and noisy dinners with Martha complaining that no one was eating properly. The question that accompanied him to sleep was new. How had it taken him so long to discover that this was exactly what he had always wanted? The conversation that would change everything happened on a Saturday afternoon, as Julian and Clara organized old photos to make an album for the boys. The twins were in the backyard with Martha, planting a small garden. Look at this photo, Clara said, showing a picture of the boys as babies. They were so tiny. I missed all that, Julian murmured, touching the photo. You didn't miss everything. You're recovering it now. But why, Clara? Why didn't you really try harder to find me? The question hung in the air. Clara stopped looking at the photos. Do you want the truth? Always have. I was afraid. Afraid of what? Of you doing exactly what you did. Julian didn't understand. What do you mean? Showing up, being affectionate with them, and then disappearing when something better came along, like you did with me in college. The accusation hurt because it had a basis in truth. Clara, I was young, immature. You were. And I didn't want the boys to go through what I did. I preferred to protect them. And now? Now I see that you really have changed. But it took time for me to trust. Julian looked out the window, seeing Owen explain to Sammy how to plant seeds correctly. Can I tell you something I've never told anyone? You can. My mother always said that feelings hindered success, that a real man didn't show weakness. Is that why you were always so closed off? That's why. It took me years to understand she was wrong. What changed? Them. Julian pointed to his sons. Seeing Owen be scared and still be brave. Seeing Sammy be sensitive and strong at the same time. They taught me that feelings aren't weakness. Clara smiled for the first time during the conversation. They teach us a lot, don't they? They do. And you taught me too. Me? To be present. To listen. To not try to buy affection with expensive gifts. At that moment, Owen ran in, hands covered in dirt. Dad, Mom, come see. The seeds are already sprouting. Already? Julian asked, surprised. Okay, they're not sprouting yet. Owen laughed. But Martha said they'll sprout in a few weeks. And what did you plant? Clara asked. Sunflowers, Sammy shouted from the doorway. Because they grow big and strong. After the boys went back to the backyard, Clara looked at Julian. You know what's funny? What? They chose sunflowers. They always follow the sun. And so? It's what you did. You followed what was most important. That night during dinner, Owen asked an unexpected question. Dad, are you and Mom going to get married again? Julian almost choked on his water. Clara blushed. Owen, we were never married, she explained. But you're our parents, and you like each other. It's complicated, son, Julian said. Why is it complicated? Sammy asked. You live in the same house, you take care of us together. Martha, who was serving dessert, murmured softly, out of the mouths of babes. Later, after everyone was asleep, Julian and Clara were in the living room, unsure what to say. They have a very simple view of things, Clara commented. Simple, but not necessarily wrong. Julian, relax, I'm not asking for anything, just observing. Observing what? That we're a family. It might not be traditional, but we are. We really are. And that makes me happy. Me too. There were no dramatic declarations or grand promises. Just the recognition that they had built something special together. The question that accompanied Julian that night was gentle and hopeful. Perhaps sometimes the best things in life emerge not when we plan them, but when we allow ourselves to simply be happy. 1 year after the move to Portland, Julian woke up to the smell of pancakes. In the kitchen, he found Martha teaching Sammy how to flip the batter, while Owen read about astronomy. Good morning, family, he said, kissing the boys' heads. Daddy, look. Sammy showed off an almost perfectly round pancake. It's getting just like Martha's. Clara came in still in her pajamas, leaning into Julian for a morning kiss. It was routine now, but it still brought Julian gratitude, his family, his home. Dad, can you help me with a project? Owen asked. Of course. Which one? A presentation on the solar system for the science fair. And I'll help with the cool parts, Sammy declared. After breakfast in the backyard, the sunflowers they had planted were enormous, their faces turned toward the sun. Remember when they said sunflowers always follow the sun? Clara asked. I do. You said that's what I'd done. It was true. You followed what mattered. Julian observed the golden flowers. You know what I discovered? It wasn't just me following the sun. It was our whole family growing towards the light. Owen appeared with a paper airplane. Dad, can you teach me how to make that airplane that flies far? Why do you want to learn? To teach Tyler. He never had a dad to teach him these things. The answer touched Julian deeply. Owen passing on what he had received. Then we'll make the best paper airplane in the world. For an hour, they made airplanes in the backyard. Martha revealed a talent for loop-de-loop airplanes. Clara photographed everything. In the afternoon, they walked to the local park. Sammy ran ahead. Owen talked about his plans to be a paleontologist and an astronaut. Is it possible to be both? He asked. If anyone can do it, it's you. Julian replied. How do you know? Because you're determined, just like I was with you. They sat on a bench, watching Sammy make friends. Owen participated in the adults' conversation between his readings. Mommy, are you happy? Owen asked suddenly. Very happy. Why? Because you smile differently now. You smile with your eyes too. And you? Julian asked. Are you happy here? We are, they answered together. Even missing New York? Missing it is part of it, Owen said with wisdom that surprised the adults. But we can miss it and still be happy where we are. At the ice cream shop, Sammy asked a profound question. Dad, do you regret anything? I regret taking so long to find you, but I don't regret anything after that. Not even coming to Portland? Especially not coming to Portland. That night, Clara was on the porch looking at the stars. What are you thinking about? Julian asked. How fast life changed. 2 years ago, I was a single mom struggling alone. Today, I have a complete family, and a man who loves you all more than anything in the world. Thank you for not giving up, for fighting for them, for us. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Third chance, she corrected, laughing. College, Whole Foods, and when I let myself trust you again. In the bedroom, Julian looked at the drawing of the 5 stick figures on the wall. In a year and a half, he had gained a family, moved cities, rebuilt his career, and discovered that happiness had nothing to do with bank accounts. It had to do with Sammy wanting to sleep in his parents' room after a nightmare, with Owen reading interesting discoveries during dinner, with Martha preparing everyone's favorite dishes, with Clara falling asleep beside him every night. The final question was no longer a doubt, but a realization. Who would have thought that true wealth was being woken up at 6 in the morning by 2 boys wanting pancakes and considering it the best part of the day? Outside, the sunflowers were preparing for another day of following the light.